our practices were often much more difficult than our games. And that was pretty consistent throughout my 4 years at Duke, but it was really true our senior year. And the competitiveness and the spirit of competitiveness was unbelievable.
That is Shane Battier, co-captain of the 2001 Duke Blue Devils, and this is episode 2 of Return to Glory, the story of how Shane and his teammates reached the pinnacle of college basketball by winning a national title exactly 20 years ago. Hi there, I'm Jason Evans, the host of Return to Glory. I spoke to every member of that 2001 Duke team to learn about the ins and outs. What was the secret sauce that helped them to win a championship? In this episode, as you just heard from Shane, we're going to focus on the practices, because nothing works in a game unless you've worked on it 100 times in practice. And co-captain Battier told me the first step to a good practice is being in shape.
Looking back at my career, a huge part of our success is we were just in better shape than everybody else. And our preseason conditioning program and our preseason, it was really tough, really tough. We're running 17 across, which you have to touch the sideline 17 times under a minute, and you get a minute of rest, and you got to do that like 5 times. And if one person doesn't make the sprint, do it again. And so there were more times when we were just yelling at, "Come on, Buck!" Andre Buckner would be diving across the line, diving head first to make it because he didn't want to let down the team. And I'll never forget just going to Card Gym, which is the gym right across from Cameron. And this is back when nothing was air conditioned. Okay, so like a sweltering hot gym in Durham in September, and we're running sprints. But we knew, look, if we pay the price now, when we get into the ACC season, it's going to pay off. And one thing Coach K never let us do, we were never allowed to bend over in fatigue. We were never allowed to grab our shorts and show people that, man, Duke is tired. And so it became I was taught this my freshman year by Wojo and Trajan, that when you're tired, you stand up and you never let the opponent see you fatigued, because that's intimidation. And so even though we were so tired sometimes, if an opponent looked at us, they would look at us and say, "Dang, Duke is still fresh. We're tired." And we knew that's when we had teams.
So conditioning was one part of practice, but Shane told me the biggest key to success that year was the quality of the competition in practice.
And we called the Blue Squad was the guys who were not Jay Will and Booz and me and Dunleavy, and they tried to take our lunch every single day. And some days they did, believe it or not, and they would talk more trash, and you wouldn't hear the end of it. And so the battles we had in practice, it was probably the best part of that year, because it was so competitive, and it made our games, even in the ACC, look like a cakewalk sometimes, which is crazy to say.
You heard him right. Shane Battier says the battles in practice were often tougher than playing a regular season game against an ACC opponent. Again and again, I heard from members of the 2001 team that the Blue Squad, the non-starters, were truly unique that season. Here's a member of the Blue Squad, walk-on Andy Borman.
One of the hardest parts for me of being a walk-on is, you're part of that scout team. You're part of the team, that you're kind of taking on a new identity with every game. If we're preparing for Wake Forest, now we're Wake Forest. And if you're preparing for Clemson, now you're Clemson. The thing that always cracks me up, I used to get in so much trouble with the coaches because we would be preparing for an opponent. Say we're preparing for Maryland and we're the scout team, and the coaches are, okay, Andy, you're going to simulate Juan Dixon, or you're going to simulate Steve Blake. And then we would go out there and practice. There is no part of me that in any way can ever do what Juan Dixon did, or in any way, in any way can do what Steve Blake did. And the coaches would get so mad, so mad at me No. He like, Juan's not going to do it that way. Andy, you need to do this. And I'm sitting there going like, I can't do this. I promise you I want to. I promise you I would love to morph into one of these great ACC players to better prepare our team for this upcoming battle. But there is nothing that I can do to even remotely simulate that. And I'm trying my hardest. And they would get so frustrated with me. And I didn't, there's nothing more to do.
That is fun. That is really funny.
It is true. And it existed forever. I'm probably one of the very few walk-ons that has ever been subbed out during a scout, for not being able to do what the opposing player would ever do. And they'd sub me and I'd be like, yeah, you should. I can't do this.
Andy Borman, who was a starter on Duke's nationally ranked soccer team, would join the basketball Blue Devils a couple months into the season. He was joined on the blue team by Reggie Love, who did the same thing after football season ended.
I mean, the camaraderie was really like if you were on the blue team, I mean, there was a big camaraderie because we would compete against, the starters all the time, or the starters and two subs or whatever. And so we always wanted to beat the shit out of them, even if we were running someone else's offense. So, we felt I think there was a high level of closeness and connectivity between the blue team. I remember we would maybe middle of the year, we even wrote BT bombers on our shoes or something, because we were so, jazzed up about our practices.
Can I ask how often did the blue team beat the starters in practice?
Look, anytime we were running an offense that had 2-3 high motion, we were most likely gonna destroy them. Because ultimately, Shane was such a big factor in the defensive scheme. And so anything that took Shane a man and a half away from the basket, led to us being able to score the ball. And we had Dante Jones, and who was a great scorer. JD Simpson was a great shooter. We had folks who could play.
There are two names you just heard, JD Simpson and Dante Jones, that came up repeatedly when the members of the 2001 Blue Devils would talk about their practice scrimmages. Here's Ryan Caldbeck, another member of the blue team, reflecting on his teammates.
I think one thing that's really hard for the coaching staff to teach, which I think the blue team in 01 had, is just some moxie, just a belief that we belong. And you saw that from much of the 01 blue team. I mean, JD's really damn talented, JD Simpson. And JD also does not act with an arrogance on the court. He acts with a confidence, and a confidence we can beat this white team. And so he was the senior leader on the blue team, even though he was a walk-on. I think that helped. And you kind of go down each next member, right? You've got Dante, who was an NBA player, and everyone knew he would be an NBA player, and that gives you a shot of confidence. Andre Buckner, you could probably look up the tussle that he had with the UNC coach, Matt Doherty. He doesn't take it from anyone. He doesn't take junk from anyone. He's a warrior. You want him on your side. And so there's so many practices where him and Jason Williams or him and Chris Duhon might get into a little tussle, and they're friends. They're absolutely friends, but he'd leave the tussle being screw these guys. We're better than these guys. We can beat these guys, and just pump us up.
Freshman point guard Chris Duhon said it was more than JD Simpson's shooting ability that made him a really special practice player.
JD, I mean, he was very big in my development as a player, because we went against each other so many times in practice. And, JD is just always positive and always knew, what to say. And, you respect a lot of people don't respect walk-ons or, guys at the end of the bench because, you can be judged as they're not good enough or anything like that. But one, I thought JD was a great player. He knew the game, and I respected how he carried himself, how he and not just him, all those guys, but him in particular, because he and I, with me and Jay playing 1 and 2, it was Buck and JD a lot. So, we were always cross and match, during our practice. So we battled each other throughout the whole year. But he always, gave positive word. It looked like he never had a bad day. And, so, I mean, he deserved to hold that trophy as much as anybody else.
But no matter how good the rest of the blue team was, the real secret to their success was Dante Jones. Jones had transferred from Rutgers, where he was a star. NCAA rules meant he could not play in any Duke games that season, but he could practice. And wow, did he ever practice.
I had nothing else. I had no games. Like, I treated every practice like a game. I got to be every team's leading scorer. I'm ultra competitive in general. So I just used those just to keep me at bay, because that was the first time that, like, my best friend had been taken from me. That's my first girl from basketball, and not being able to compete, not being able to play a game. Sometimes you can understand it when you're hurt, but if you're not hurt, you're fully healthy, you've been working hard, you've had success last year, and you just cannot participate in the games. It's a mental struggle. So I just use that as my venting and my ability just to get out some of the stress that I was under, but also fall in love with the game and kind of take that seriously and help those guys prepare, just be better on a daily basis. Shane Battier, Martin Levy, Nate James were my matchups, but they also had to guard me, and I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted to. So they were in trouble.
But I mean, Shane, obviously, one of the elite defenders in the history of the game. Talk to me a little bit about what it's like to play against a guy who's guarding you that way.
Shane is an elite defender, but his mental preparation for defense is amazing as well. So it wasn't just physical; it was the mental part of Shane's game that you were fighting, and it was a great matchup. It helped me get better, helped expedite my transition into the program, and how hard I had to play, and how I had to just be at a different level to compete on that team. So Shane was just a tough battle offensively and defensively, but I could play defense as well. So, like, coach would have to, like, take me and, like, dial it down a little bit, because it'd get super competitive, and he'd be like, no, we need to be confident going into the next game. So, like, we both had different strengths and weaknesses. I'm a better perimeter defender. So Shane played on the perimeter, so I could do a lot of things, hold, and I was faster than Shane. So it gave him a different dynamic to look at, to prepare at a higher level, because he wasn't going to see a defender like me in the games.
So you're saying that Coach K would say to you, hey, don't crush their confidence? Really?
There are points and times where, yes, they're tired. They're coming in. Like, I'm fresh. I'm always fresh. So, yes, you have a different – they're coming into practice, and you're coming in like it's a game, so you got to dial it back a little bit sometimes, just to keep their confidence going. And other time, he just let us go full blast at each other and just keep that competitive juice going. So it was a ebb and flow of what we had to do to keep them going, but we also got to compete at a very, very, very high level.
It almost seems crazy that a practice player could hurt the confidence of a starter, but Dante Jones was a truly elite athlete who would go on to have a long career in the NBA, winning an NBA title as a teammate of LeBron James. Have a listen to what Carlos Boozer told me about the intensity that Dante Jones brought to practices.
I want to go back to Dante Jones for a second. When Jay Will and Coach K got Dante able to transfer to come play with us, the rules were different than it is today. You had to sit out a whole year. So Dante knew he was coming to Duke to practice for a year. No games, practice. So let me tell you what Coach K, what Jay Will, and what Dunleavy told Dante. Dante, we call him Tay. Tay, use these games, use these practices as your games, and bust Shane's ass. Okay, because Dante was a pure scorer. Like, he's coming from Rutgers, where He's getting buckets every which way you can think of. And by the way, he's a freak athlete. And by the way, he's a lockdown defender, which is what he was for 10 years in the NBA. He was a lockdown defender. So he was all over Shane the whole season. I mean, listen, Shane is one of the most competitive dudes, also one of the most successful college players in the history of college basketball. One of the best college players ever. His 4 years, magnificent what he was able to accomplish. And Dante was in his shit every day, eating his lunch every day in practice. And he's from Jersey, so he's letting them know all about it. He's talking to him. Every practice for Dante was a game. I'm gonna go bust Shane Battier's ass. Shane Battier to Dante Jones was like Derek Jeter of college basketball. You know what I mean? Like, he was clean resume, always a winner. Like, that's how Dante viewed Shane, and he wanted every part of that matchup.
As I spoke to the 2001 team about their practice scrimmages, Dante Jones's intensity wasn't the only thing that stood out. Again and again, the big men on the team would come back to how tough their battles were in the paint, especially when you were playing against the physical beast that was Carlos Boozer. Here's power forward Nick Horvath.
It's like probably how it is in every coach, but like as the bigs, we used to always feel that coaches were hardest on us, you know, like, man, these guards just get to run around and shoot threes, and we're down here like getting our ass whooped and just getting yelled at. So I got a story about Carlos. So I was like, you know, a skinny 6'9" white kid from Minnesota. Like when I showed up at Duke as a 17-year-old, I probably weighed like 185. You know, I was 6'9". I was like, I could hide behind a stop sign, right? And Carlos, so the beginning of the year, we get like baseline measurements and like pull-ups, push-ups, bench press, all this stuff. Carlos is like never lifted weights before, and we're doing bench press max, and there's like 235 pounds on the bar, right? So 245s, and no one can do it. Like we worked our way up, and Carlos goes down. He's got like close grip on it, like because he just doesn't know what he's doing, and he like lifts it off the thing. And he like does like 8 reps. He's like looking around. He's like asking Will, the weight coach. He's like, "Am I doing it right?" And he's just like obliterating all of us on this bench press thing. As it's like he's never done it before, but he's like superhumanly strong already. And I just remember looking at him being like, "Oh my God, what is this?" So Carlos was just. I remember in practice, they would stat everything in practice. And so it'd be like Carlos on the A team, and I remember going through like a zone or something. So like on the blue team, we're like the second squad. We have to run this zone, and they're like, we spent like an hour straight playing this 2-3, and they were running this play, and so they're statting the whole thing. So rebounds, assists, points, or whatever. I remember looking at Casey and I are looking at the thing at the end of practice, and we're like, Jesus, Carlos scored 85 on us today. Carlos had 85 points. You know, like, because they were running the same, like, duck-in set over and over again. And you just, like, I don't know, 285 pounds, ducking in on 190. You just couldn't do anything. You know, he was just a monster.
Fellow big man Matt Christensen echoed those comments. He said there was only one word for the battles in the paint: violent.
And we would often, either in Cameron or in Card Gymnasium just adjacent, work out with me, Carlos Boozer, Casey Sanders, and Nick Horvath when he was healthy. And those were rough. Like, it's hard to express the level of, like, I hesitate to use the word because it can be so much worse than it was, but the level of violence that was going on in those conditions, you know, there were no fouls called. And so as soon as somebody kind of fouls you and it doesn't get called, you both get frustrated at the coaches who are putting you through this, but also at the player, your teammate who fouled you, because most likely you missed the shot and yet got nothing from it. If you foul me and I go to the line, that kind of is fair. If you foul me and I miss and nothing happens, like I've been dealt with unjustly. And so I will exact justice on my own. And so you have like this kind of mutually assured destruction that you inch towards as you just get increasingly harder and harder in how you foul each other. And, I think the coaching staff felt, and to some degree, I agree, although maybe not to the degree that they felt it, that a lot of the stuff that happens in the front court and under the basket is just a matter of guts and effort. And so being tough enough to kind of fight through, getting annihilated by two people your same size, as you kind of fight over the single like life jacket as you all try to get off the sinking ship or whatever the metaphor is. There is one person who is going to come out of this without some sort of punitive measure, and you're all just desperate not to be that person and not to be the one who has to do 17 across or suicide after you're fully exhausted. So they were trying to just make us as tough as we could, and when we didn't play well, and this continued into the season, when we didn't play well, it was just like I think the common explanation, I'm not behind closed doors with the coaching staff, but I think that the consensus was our problems will be solved by more front court toughness. And so go toughen those guys up. And the big guy conditioning was just like savage.
Toughening up the big men. Reserve guard Andre Buckner told me a story about one way Coach K tried to toughen up Carlos Boozer at Andy Borman's expense.
There was one practice where, I know Coach was just pissed off at Carlos for something. And it had something to do with toughness or something like that. And it's just, he put Carlos on lock and basically told him to stand there. And our guy Borman, poor kid, was just, his task was just to basically run into Carlos. Carlos was, I think he was either trying to cheat to take a charge or be tough or something. But I mean, it was one of the scariest moments because, Andy's, 6'1", and here you got this big ass, Boozer who, Andy's just piling into him, and it looked scary, man. It's like, man, Andy, are you okay?
So when the practices were over, it was time to hit the showers, and that was time for the team to let off some steam and let in some practical jokes. Here's Mike Dunleavy.
I mean, we had some funny stuff. I recall one, you get guys like singing in the shower. You'd have to ask Andre and Andy about the bagel in the shower episode where, like one of the things back then with feeding the team was there was limitations on meals and things like that. So like the maximum you could provide before practice for a meal was like bagels, right? Not like breakfast sandwiches or omelets or anything like that. So it was like bagels. They throw down the bagels with like the spread and the schmears and things like that. And then like these bagels just like took a life of their own. Guys would bring them in the shower, and guys would do all this shit in the hot tub with them. And like, it was just like this running joke, bagel in the shower. But it's just funny stuff like that. There was always like these inside jokes.
All right, so Mike said I had to ask Andre Buckner about bagels in the shower, so I did.
I'm supposed to ask everybody about bagels in the shower or something like that. What's the story? What's the story about the bagels?
Yeah, man. It's just every after every practice, we they always had different little snacks and assortments out for us, man. So bagels was one of those things that was always there, and after practice, you just grab your bagel or whatever, and you cream it up, and you only got a certain amount of time, so you got to get ready. You got to hit the bagels in the shower, man. You can't sit there and eat them. You got to go get in the shower and eat your bagels in the shower. So we just made a cool song about it, man.
Wait, I'm sorry, you made a song about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember? Come on, you gotta sing me some of the songs.
More like a tune, not necessarily a song, but more like a tune. It's just you walk through bagels in the shower. It just
Just one of those things to get a chuckle out of somebody, man. It definitely something I just said, and it took off. I think they thought it was way funnier than I did, but but yeah, it's something I just blurted out one day, and it stuck.
So if you ever happen to see a member of the 2001 Duke Blue Devils, just sing "Bagels in the Shower," and you're sure to get a smile in response. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, a preview of the next episode of Return to Glory. Welcome back to Return to Glory, the story of the 2001 Duke Blue Devils. Okay, that's enough about practice and preseason. In our next episode, it's time to play some games. And our first stop will be a game that has turned into a legend.
So they were ready for us. They were hungry. Their fans were into it. The environment was wild.
But I remember coming into that huddle and Coach K saying, "We're not going to lose." And I'm like, "What? We're not going to lose? What do you mean? We're down double digits here."
We're walking out on the court, and I look at Jay, and Jay just winks at me. So the first thought going in my head is like, "What the fuck are you winking at me for? Like, you fucking playing terrible. Like, we about to get our ass whooped up."
The story of what has come to be known as the Miracle Minute on the next episode of Return to Glory. Return to Glory is a production of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. It is written, produced, and hosted by me, Jason Evans. If you want to get every episode as soon as they are released, please subscribe to the Duke Basketball Report podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to reach out to me, email dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week when we hear all about the first epic matchup between the 2001 Duke Blue Devils and the Maryland Terrapins.